India is building a vast airport on land carved from the banks of a river. At first, that idea sounds almost reckless until you see the scale of the crisis it is meant to fix. Air travel demand is exploding. Existing airports are overwhelmed, and finding open space near major cities has become nearly impossible. So, why place an airport surrounded by water, and why are engineers confident they can control the risk? The answer shows how far the country must go to keep growing and why conventional fixes are no longer enough. India's cities are swelling at a pace rarely seen in modern history. By 2050, an additional 330 million people, equal to the entire population of the United States, will be living in Indian urban centers. This is not a distant projection. The country's urban population is already climbing toward 951 million, and by the end of this decade, more than 40% of India's 1.4 billion citizens will be city dwellers. The pressure on infrastructure is relentless. Roads, power lines, and water supplies are being stretched thin, but nowhere is the strain more visible than in the skies. Aviation demand curves have become steeper with every passing year. As more families move to cities and incomes rise, air travel is shifting from a luxury to a necessity. The number of passengers surges each quarter, and planners are forced to look decades ahead just to keep up. The World Bank estimates that over the next 15 years, India will need to invest $840 billion in urban infrastructure alone. More than half of the systems required for 2050 have not even been built yet. This scale of growth leaves little room for half measures. The City and Industrial Development Corporation of Maharashtra, CIDCO, faces a dilemma that plays out in every major city: how to accommodate explosive demand when existing airports are already bursting at the seams and suitable land is almost impossible to find. The challenge is not just about keeping up with today's crowds, it is about preparing for a future where millions more will expect seamless connectivity, and where the old fixes, adding a runway here, expanding a terminal there, no longer make a dent in the problem. If you enjoy understanding why countries invest billions into projects like this, not just how big they are, consider subscribing. This channel breaks down the ideas shaping the future before they become obvious. At Mumbai's Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj International Airport, every available slot is spoken for. Planes circle overhead, waiting for a chance to land, while departure boards fill with delays. The same pattern repeats in Bengaluru, Delhi, and Hyderabad. Airports designed for yesterday's traffic are now struggling to process today's. Runways operate at maximum frequency, and terminals overflow during peak hours. The result isn't just inconvenience. Airlines are forced to turn down new routes, and ticket prices climb as competition for landing rights intensifies. For businesses, missed connections mean lost contracts and wasted hours. Regional economists warn that these bottlenecks are more than a nuisance. They impose real costs on trade, investment, and the pace of urban growth. Slot scarcity has become a defining feature of Indian aviation. In 2023, Mumbai's airport handled more than 50 million passengers, yet could not add a single new takeoff or landing during rush periods. Airlines, unable to expand at major hubs, begin looking to secondary cities or international gateways. This creates a ripple effect. Economic activity migrates outward, but only where infrastructure allows. Without new capacity, the country's most dynamic regions risk falling behind their global competitors. The government's response is to encourage greenfield airport development, entirely new facilities built from the ground up, unconstrained by the limits of existing city sites, but finding suitable land near population centers is nearly impossible. In the Mumbai region, every square kilometer is spoken for by homes, factories, or protected wetlands. This scarcity forces planners to consider unconventional options like building on land surrounded by a river where the risks are high, but the alternatives are running out. The urgency is clear. Unless new capacity comes online, India's aviation ambitions will remain stuck on the runway. India's aviation planners are not alone in grappling with these constraints. Airports from London to Tokyo have faced similar bottlenecks, but the urgency in India is on another scale. Each year, millions more join the ranks of air travelers, while the number of flights that can land and take off at the country's busiest airports remains fixed. The gap between demand and capacity grows wider, pushing government agencies and private developers to search for solutions that break from the past. The logic is clear. Without new infrastructure, the country's economic ambitions risk being throttled by delays and missed opportunities. Yet every new airport project faces its own set of challenges: political, financial, and environmental. Land acquisition alone can take years, with negotiations stretching across hundreds of stakeholders. Environmental approvals add another layer of complexity, especially when projects intersect with rivers, wetlands, or protected habitats. Each decision becomes a balancing act between growth and preservation, between the needs of today and the risks of tomorrow. The question remains, when conventional land is exhausted, what makes a site surrounded by a river not only possible, but necessary? The answer lies in a blend of engineering, economics, and the relentless pressure of urban growth. By looking beyond the obvious, India's planners are betting that the future of aviation lies in places once considered out of reach. Securing land for a new airport near a city like Mumbai is not just a matter of finding empty space. Every patch of ground within reach of the urban core is already claimed by homes, factories, or protected wetlands. The cost of acquiring even 1 square kilometer can reach extraordinary levels. Recent auctions in Navi Mumbai have seen rates soar past 760,000 rupees per square meter, with total bids for small parcels topping 1,400 crore rupees. These prices are not outliers. They reflect a market where demand for developable land outpaces supply by a wide margin. Legal and regulatory barriers add further complications. Land acquisition in India is governed by a patchwork of state and national laws, each requiring lengthy negotiations with hundreds of stakeholders. Compensation models have evolved in response to protest and litigation, shifting from cash payments to allotments of developed plots, sometimes as much as 22.5% of the original holding. But even with these incentives, the process can drag on for years, stalling projects and driving up costs. Environmental constraints are equally decisive. Much of the region surrounding Mumbai is designated as wetland or mangrove, protected by law and fiercely defended by environmental groups. Attempts to build on these sites trigger legal battles and public backlash, making approval for conventional airport sites nearly impossible. The experience of CIDCO, the City and Industrial Development Corporation of Maharashtra, illustrates the reality. Every option close to the metropolitan area is either prohibitively expensive, locked in litigation, or off-limits due to environmental regulation. This scarcity forces planners to look at land that would once have been dismissed as marginal or risky. Areas flanked by rivers or prone to flooding, which would be last on the list in a less crowded region, suddenly become viable when the alternatives are exhausted. The river-adjacent plot under consideration is not an accident of desperation, but a calculated response to a market where the cost and complexity of conventional land acquisition have outstripped the resources and timelines available. For CIDCO, the choice reflects a trade-off: accept the engineering challenges of a river site, or risk missing the window to deliver critical infrastructure for one of the world's fastest-growing urban populations. Engineers faced a challenge that would have sidelined most airport projects. A river ran straight through the site. Instead of abandoning the location, they set out to tame the Ulway River itself. The solution began with a diversion, an engineered channel stretching 3.2 kilometers, designed to redirect the river's flow away from the heart of the airport. At its broadest, the new channel measures 200 meters wide, gradually narrowing to 120 meters as it approaches Moha Creek. This taper is not arbitrary. It is calculated to accelerate water safely past the reclaimed land, preventing dangerous buildup during monsoon peaks. Hydraulic experts at the Central Water and Power Research Station spent 4 years modeling the river's behavior. They tested every scenario, from routine rainfall to the most severe storms predicted by probable maximum precipitation models. Their target was clear: the airport's runways and terminals had to remain dry even if the river reached a design flood level of 4.5 meters. To achieve this, the entire platform, including runways, taxiways, and service roads, was raised above that threshold using millions of cubic meters of engineered fill. The elevation acts as a shield, keeping critical infrastructure above floodwaters that would have inundated the old riverbed. Embankments along reclaimed edges were reinforced to withstand the force of fast-moving water. Detention basins collect excess runoff during sudden downpours, while a network of culverts and underground drains channels water away from the airfield. Pumps stand ready to remove any residual pooling, reducing the risk of waterlogging that can cripple airport operations. Each component was tested against simulations of the worst-case monsoon, with margins built in to account for future climate shifts. This approach draws on lessons from flood-prone airports around the world. The channel's geometry and drainage systems mirror proven strategies used in places like Kansai and Cheklapkak, where river diversions and elevated runways have kept airports operational through typhoons and heavy rains. The result is a site where the river's presence is managed, not feared, calculated risk supported by data and decades of engineering experience. For planners, this is the price of building in a region where conventional land is out of reach, but the stakes for getting it right are too high to ignore. Extending the existing airport or finding a patch of empty ground might sound like simple solutions. For planners at Sidco, these options collapsed under scrutiny. Expanding Mumbai's current airport was quickly ruled out. The site is boxed in by dense neighborhoods, industrial zones, and protected wetlands. Adding even a single new runway would have required displacing thousands of families and violating strict environmental regulations, costs that no government or developer could justify. Other proposals surfaced, building further out on the urban fringe or carving new space from the city's shrinking greenbelts. Each idea ran into a wall of legal and financial obstacles. Land prices near Mumbai have soared to over 760,000 rupees per square meter, with even small parcels fetching bids above 14 billion rupees. Every available tract within reach of the urban core was either locked in litigation, earmarked for conservation, or tangled in decades-old property claims. The process of acquisition, negotiating with hundreds of individual owners, settling disputes, and relocating entire communities would have taken years and driven costs to unsustainable levels. Attempts to repurpose industrial land or underuse government plots ran into similar barriers. Many sites were contaminated, poorly connected, or too small to meet the long-term needs of a major international airport. Even proposals to build offshore on reclaimed land in the bay were dismissed after engineering studies exposed the risks of subsidence and storm surge, and after public opposition over environmental impacts intensified. With each conventional option eliminated, the focus shifted to marginal land, areas previously dismissed as too risky or complex. The river-adjacent site, while daunting, offered something none of the alternatives could. It provided a contiguous stretch of land large enough for runways, terminals, and future expansion, all within a reasonable distance of the city's economic heart. The trade-off was clear. Accept the engineering challenge of managing water and flood risk, or accept the certainty of gridlock, spiraling costs, and lost opportunities. For Sidco's planners, the river site was not a gamble, but the last viable move on a shrinking board. On the ground, progress carries a human cost. In Pushpak Nagar, families who once farmed or fished the lowlands found their world upended by the airport's arrival. The land they surrendered was not simply bought outright. Under Sidco's compensation model, each landowner received rights to 22.5% of their original holdings, now transformed into developed plots. Even so, not everyone felt whole. Some residents struggled to rebuild livelihoods in dense new neighborhoods far from the river's edge. Legal challenges followed. In 2020, a case reached the National Green Tribunal. Local petitioners argued the river diversion and land reclamation threatened ecology and community. The tribunal weighed expert testimony and environmental reports, but the project moved ahead. For those in Pushpak Nagar, the airport is more than a line on a map. It is a daily reminder of what was lost and a test of promises made in the name of progress. India's need for new airports is matched by the scale of investment required to build them. Urban infrastructure alone will demand over $2 trillion by 2050, a figure that dwarfs most national budgets. To bridge this gap, planners rely on a mosaic of funding sources, including national government allocations, private sector capital, and international partners. The Asian Development Bank has committed $10 billion over 5 years to support urban transformation projects, including new transit corridors and airport developments. This approach is not just about raising money for construction. It is designed to attract long-term investors, such as pension funds and insurance companies, whose capital can sustain decades of growth. By tying airport projects to broader regional connectivity, linking new terminals to rail, highways, and industrial hubs, India positions these investments as engines of economic integration, not isolated ventures. The financial logic is clear. Only multi-source, future-focused funding can deliver infrastructure that keeps pace with the country's ambitions. Every airport built on challenging ground comes with a maintenance contract written in invisible ink. For a river-adjacent site, that contract is even stricter. The Central Water and Power Research Station engineers are clear the airport's high availability depends on constant vigilance. Pumps, drains, and embankments must be inspected and maintained year-round, not just before the monsoon. Silt will creep into channels, embankments will settle, and drainage networks will need clearing after every storm. The system is robust, but only if each part does its job. In practice, this means a future where operational uptime is earned, not guaranteed. The risks are managed, not erased. For India's planners, the reward is clear: a major airport where none could exist before, provided the commitment to maintenance outpaces the river's return. India's decision to build here signals a new era where necessity and innovation collide, even at the water's edge. As urban growth accelerates and air travel surges, every square kilometer counts. The success or failure of this site will echo far beyond its runways, shaping how fast-growing nations reimagine impossible spaces. Infrastructure, now more than ever, is a test of resolve and vision. More videos like this coming soon.